Tucker Carlson is telling everyone what he really feels about the Epstein files cover-up.
In remarks at Turning Point USA over the weekend, he slammed people in the administration who won't tell the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. He even flatly asserted, "We all know the disgraced financier and abuser of young girls was in actuality an intelligence asset." Listen to this.
And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried.
Carlson went on to accuse Israel of being the foreign power that Epstein was working for. Take a look.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that.
In his speech, Carlson also criticized the MAGA movement for being overly focused on small victories in the culture war instead of tackling bigger issues like crime and the unaffordability of housing for young people.
Very sensational remarks, I guess, although they're very popular there. And no, Tucker is actually saying something a lot of people believe, and I understand why they believe it. I myself am curious about it, whether the reason for the secrecy around Epstein is because he was in contact or he provided information to an intelligence organization, Mossad or American or something else, and thus he was protected. And it's not that, and so his activities, and the reason why this would add up is that explains why he got the light sentence, why despite the knowledge of his sexual proclivities, he was not, locked up and thrown away the key until it really got out of hand. They knew about what he was doing, and they were like kind of looking the other way because he was providing information. Also, Tucker asking of whether that explains whether was he paid off? Was he paid for this? Is that explains the origins of his money? How he became so wealthy is not well understood in any of the reporting about him. His background is, as Tucker says there. Now, I will say we obviously don't have any hard evidence that this is the case. People often point to Alex Acosta, a former Trump cabinet member who actually oversaw the prosecution of Epstein first time around in Florida, having been reported that he told someone that there was an intelligence connection. But that was not in sworn testimony or anything. That was just a report in a, frankly, media outlet I don't trust very much, the Daily Beast. So I don't know. My honest question is I don't know. I think it is fair to ask questions about it. I would like to know more about it. I would like our government to disclose it if it is the case. They're obviously choosing not to do that, which is why people like Tucker are frustrated.
This is a natural, where there's smoke, there's fire situation. Yeah. There's so much smoke here. Even President Trump, who's really good at deflecting or changing the subject, can't even change the subject because people are paying attention to things that really do matter, like with the floods in Texas and other big issues. But at the end of the day, people really want to know what's going on, even people who weren't involved, just the way that it dramatically went from we've got information to drop it, why are you still talking about it? That feels like the biggest whiplash in the world, that dramatic change of tone. Right. And I think that everyone is looking for answers. So even Tucker Carlson coming up with this theory, when you don't give an answer, people come up with theories. People come up with lies, truth, whatever they're going to become their own researchers, investigative journalists. Everyone who wanted to know is not just going to leave this alone. They're going to keep finding information. Every day I get on social media, I'm scrolling, I see videos of Trump proof that Trump knows Epstein, even though he mentioned that he doesn't barely know him. Like, it's just not going to stop. The only way to make this stop is to provide real information. And we're seeing cracks within the MAGA movement, which is also something that I think Trump should be alarmed about, because out of all the topics that I thought they would have started to get riled up about, this was one that really, I think you said this last week, is taking the cake out of all the topics.
Well, when something is weird, people start reaching for more creative explanations because the underlying facts are weird. This is why the Kennedy assassination has, for decades and decades and decades, spawned all these theories about what was really going on. Did his vice president kill him? Was it the CIA? Was it Cuba? Was it the mafia? Because it was weird that this guy Oswald shot and killed him and then was himself shot and killed a few days later. Right. That is a weird thing to happen, and thus people started to wonder, well, was what else was going on? Was Oswald killed for a reason? Now we know with reasonable confidence and certainty decades later. We don't maybe not know with absolute certainty. Certainly people still think maybe there was something nefarious there, but we know basically that Oswald probably acted alone. He was himself a communist sympathizer. He'd visited, I think, Russia. He had a Russian wife. He was a Cuban sympathizer and shot him for that reason, and then was killed by a guy who loved Kennedy and was mad that Kennedy had gotten shot. But that seemed like a convenient cover story to a lot of people for decades, and so people didn't believe it. Similarly with this, here's this wealthy man who we don't know really how he got his money or why he got this wealthy, ends up hanging around with Donald Trump, knew him, and Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and a million other people, and was having sex with underage girls that were procured for him, and had a relationship with the British royal family, and then went to prison for some pretty appalling crimes, but it was a light sentence, got out, and resumed it. That is weird. Yes. That's unusual for that sequence of events to take place. So people want to come up with a more out-of-the-ordinary explanation.
And because people are not planning to let this go, judging by the amount of weeks that this conversation has gone on, which I don't think they should let it go, what then is Trump's strategy and the entire administration's strategy, right? Because right now he's protecting Pam Bondi, but at that same conference that we just watched, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly was there. And her tirade was not about the connection to potentially Israel. Her tirade was about Pam Bondi needs to come to the table and explain herself. She needs to say something now. She just used it all for attention. Every podcast, every media interview she said yes to, just to dangle some list. Now give me an example of why there was nothing on the list. Go specifically into detail and answer the same questions you did when you were dangling information for a year. So I think that the critics are too loud. They have too much access and too many people in their audience for Trump to say, everyone be quiet. Because you saw when a reporter asked him the question, he's like, we're still talking about this? It's like, that's not going to work for some of your biggest, supporters in media, right? So you have Megyn Kelly, who, she has a huge following and also has been very, lenient to a lot of stuff that Trump has done. And even Tucker Carlson, he's open-minded to a lot of Trump policies. So to have these critics here, you have to answer to them. You can't get around this. This is one of those things he can't just drop.
Well, I agree. One other thing I wanted to say on this topic before we move on is, so Tucker is being criticized by even some people on the right who are more pro-Israel, and they say that this is evidence of his anti-Semitism. I think that is so pathologically unfair. He is again, criticizing the government of it. He's not even criticizing them. He's saying he just wants to know if this is the reason Epstein was protected all these years. This has nothing to do with Jewish people. It is not a smear against Jews whatsoever. That obviously the U.S. government engages in all sorts of sketchy intelligence gathering, as do the governments of every nation, including Israel. It is not, again, if you make the accusation of anti-Semitism, present some actual evidence of malicious views toward Jewish people. Maybe he does, but show me the evidence. You don't make that accusation if you're going to back it up. If it's just he shouldn't even be promoting a theory that an intelligence gathering, a notoriously competent and far-reaching intelligence gathering information with all sorts of contacts inside the Iranian government and every other hostile government in the Middle East for good reason, not criticism. Good for them to do that. That's not anti-Semitism. And I saw a lot of people, even people I otherwise quite like, saying this on social media.
I think the pendulum swings when it comes to sensitive topics. Even like the Me Too movement, you can compare that to the constant criticism that everyone is anti-Semitic. And I think we're starting to see, hopefully, it come back to center that there is an opportunity and a right to criticize the government. That's actually a democracy. Yeah. That's the key cornerstone of a democracy, the right to criticize.
I certainly hope there's a right to criticize the Me Too movement, because I did a lot of it.
Well, in any movement, there's a right to criticize. That's what I mean. You have to leave that open, because you're correcting because there was a problem, right? There is a problem with the way that Jewish people, particularly Jewish Americans, but also people not understanding the Holocaust, are treated. Mm-hmm. But I think when you overcorrect now, it's like, oh, don't say a word about anything. Like, people are people, and Netanyahu's a person. He can make mistakes. And so it's a larger conversation that needs to be, combed through with care. So is AG Pam Bondi attempting to get back in the good graces of MAGA? She might be starting by dropping the charges of a doctor accused of COVID-19 fraud. We'll talk about it when we get back.